Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And last week, before this major update as far as PvP tuning, I made a prediction on my PvP tier list, and that prediction is right on your screen right now, and we're going to be reviewing it post-mortem a week after the changes to see how accurate I actually was in my prediction and how inaccurate I may have been in other places. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, some of these on S tier I think are going to be very obvious. Frost Mage, pretty happy with that prediction. It stayed rock solid in its position. It is still an amazing pick. It just has fantastic instant cast damage, really high survivability. Melee can't touch you. In some caster lobby situations in Shuffle, you may struggle, but I think it's a very minor relative to how other classes may struggle in their counter lobbies. Ellie Shaman, I think I'm pretty locked in on this as well, being a solid pick for S tier. Well-rounded damage, instant cast, can RNG, just absolutely close out a game with Ascendance procs, and really high survivability. Marksmanship Hunter, I think, is fair to leave on S tier as well, given how high aim shot can hit. It's just got a really big powerhouse as far as overall damage and decent synergy with a lot of specializations in the game. And I do think with like the downturn of plate melee DPS, right, they're not really performing as well. Marksman does get better as a result. Ret Paladin, still great, I think, with my prediction here on S tier. Really solid pick, probably the best spec overall in the game. Whether you want PvE, PvP, BGs, duels, 2v2, 3v2, it doesn't matter. Ret Paladin is like the one-size-fits-all spec for absolutely dominating any content in World of Warcraft. Frost DK, this is the first one where, you know, I was kind of hopium, I'll be honest. But I don't really do that a lot. Usually I'm pretty conservative and like, it might not be that great. This time I went in on it and I was like, I'm like full hopium, like Frost DK, I think this is your time to shine. I don't think I don't think it's S tier. After playing it myself, trying to do the 2400 challenge, I think between both Unholy and Frost, that they are some of the most difficult specs to get rating on of any of the specs that I have played so far. And I've played pretty much every class at this point, and almost every single spec at this point. So I think Frost DK and Unholy DK can be very difficult. I think especially once you get to like around 2100, I'd say like early low ratings, if you know how to do the combo on Frost DK, you can have a decent time. But as soon as enemies know how to counter you and run away from you during your cooldowns, yeah, you're going to get really tilted. So for me, how far is Frost DK going to fall on this tier list for me? I think we're going to slide it down to B tier for now. I think that's a fair spot. You can make it work. I think at low ratings it's all right, but the main issue is just you're so feast famine. Enemies can counter you so easily relative to all these classes cooldowns that are almost seemingly unavoidable. If they have add-ons at all that are telling them that like your Pillar of Frost is up and they disarm you or they piece it, like it gets really tilting. Windwalker, I think it's still fair to leave up here in S tier. Still really good pick, solid defense all around, really good overall damage. Healers is interesting as far as where I think my placement for this would be considered. So Holy Priest and Resto Druid, currently my S tier healers. I think healers are really close and it's almost indiscernible at the moment. The main reason I had these guys up here was their immunity to crowd control effects. So the Angel in the Omega Tree form. I think those are really good in Solo Shuffle. They let you just basically get off scot-free from the initial exchange of cooldowns between DPS that other healers might have a little bit more kind of RNG death around and associated with that window of time. That was the main reason. But I do think Holy Paladin is like a pretty strong contender for going up into S tier as well. It has really good mechanics. I think the hollowed ground mechanic is probably the most slept on up to this point. It was discovered in the, leading up to the AWC and utilized in the tournament. That's why we saw Paladins in the finals for North America. So I do kind of want to squeak Holy Paladin up here a little bit. I think that it's definitely a strong contender as far as healer balance for S tier. And healer balance overall is a lot better. I think it's really just Shaman and Mistweaver and Prez that might still be lagging behind, but we'll get to that as we get through the A tier. Devastation Evoker, I'm still pretty solid with my prediction here on this one. So far, only wrong on Frosty K on the S tier, and that was honestly a Hopium pick. I think I said that in the prediction. And maybe Holy Paladin as well, kind of creeping up in the ranks. Dev Evoker, I think A tier is more than fine. With Outlaw Rogue kind of falling off, I think, it's really dependent on lobbies for Dev, because if you get Rogue lobbies, it can be difficult, or Mage lobbies that can spell steal off your shrouds and things like that. It can be annoying. But it's just one of the best range. I'd almost say it's like the Ret Paladin of ranged as far as kind of effectiveness for levels of complexity. You get a lot of value out of it. I think A tier is more than fair for it still. Beast Mastery Hunter, honestly, could rub between S or A. I think it's just really well rounded. It does a lot of consistent damage, decent level of survivability. Arcane Mage still in a really good position after everything was said and done. Maybe mages might feel slightly weaker just because I think the warrior popularity is likely going to keep going down. And if the warrior population goes down, mage might struggle, but Ret will kind of prop that up. And if Windwalker replaces warrior, then mage will be fine. It'll still be doing really well in those matchups. Shadow Priest, I think A tier is still a really good spot. I think the main selling point of this is that you're really tanky. It's although it's an annoying pick because when you get attacked, you get disrupted a lot and super annoying, but you are very durable once you get kind of under the wheel of it and you get a full understanding of it. Boomkin A tier, I think, is fair. It's like the opposite of Shadow Priest. Its offense is really good, but its defense is maybe not so much, although it is getting a little bit more beefier. I think the turbo boost of item level help Boomkin the most, so your cyclones are a bit faster, so you can actually get through interrupts. And, you know, as season goes on, we get item level boosts, that's going to get faster and faster. Feral Druid, I think A tier is fair. Although I personally am just terrible at Feral Druid. I think it's my worst spec that I perform on. Although maybe Unholy DK is going to have something to say about that when I'm doing my shuffle challenges on my live stream, which I'm doing on YouTube now here as well. Apologies if my energy has been low during those. I've got some type of illness that I went to the doctor about, and I got like a little operation I got to go to. So I've seen people leaving weird comments telling me that I like hate the game or something when I'm literally going under medical stuff, but it's whatever. Feral Druid survivability, I think maybe in solo shuffle is the reason that I would prevent it from being up onto S tier, and it's kind of like burst finishing power is not as strong, but if you can figure out its complexity, I think it is still at least decently solid here in the A tier. Havoc Demon Hunter is the same, really just good kit overall, solid damage output. Subtlety Rogue, if you can deal with people stun DRing your stuns, I think it's the best rogue spec. I've been doing the Assassination Rogue Challenge. I'm about 100 rating off now of getting to the 2400 goal on it. And I think you'll see when we get to Assassination that's going to be jumping up some ranks. But I think Subtlety is more than fair on A tier. Resto Shaman, I kind of want to bump down a tier, but at the same time, I feel like there is... I feel like the Earthenwall Totem, it struggles to deal with some cooldowns in some situations. Cooldowns are definitely going to be the more weaker area of Resto Shaman, people running out of your Earthenwall Totems, range issues with landing your Spirit Link Totem. I think that kind of the issue is the main reason I'm going to be bouncing this one down a tier onto B tier for now, is I think that the coordination of your cooldowns, it's not as suitable for solo shuffle, whereas a lot of these healers, they either activate the cooldown directly on the target, they go completely immune and AoE their team very easily at times. Resto Shaman is a little bit more positional dependent, and it's the same thing with Preservation, which is why I'm actually dropping Preservation a little bit lower. It's probably even more so than Shaman. If your teammates aren't stacking right for Dream Breath, that can become a huge issue. So dropping that one down a little bit. Mistweaver, I think, is probably hanging out somewhere in here between A and B. I do think its exposure to crowd control does hold it back relative to these healers who can use tools to immune crowd control more frequently or just constantly immune crowd control. So I think healer balance maybe is showing a little bit of weaknesses and disparity between them there, even despite the buffs coming through. Demonology, I'm actually bouncing up to A tier. I didn't know what to do with Warlock on my prediction. I think if you guys remember, I was like, I'm going to be conservative with this one. But Demonology for sure is A tier. You're benefiting way more, I think, from the armor buffs than the other Warlock specializations. Really well-rounded, lots of schools of magic. That's always going to be a plus. Demonology honestly might even be creeping up into S tier as time goes on. We'll have to see. But at the moment, definitely an A tier pick. Affliction Warlock, I think Demo is going to be doing a little bit better than you. I think having Mortal Strike is a little bit nicer as well as far as synergy with specs. But it's not bad. I wouldn't say Affliction is bad. And this is where like maybe we're going to have to move some of these specializations around because I don't think having Frost on the same tier is going to be too fair. Destro Warlock, same thing. You're a lot better than you were. I do think you were a lot better than you were. It's really honestly hard for me to rank Affliction and Destro because I don't for certainly you guys are not Unholy, right? We're already going to be dropping this guy down. I honestly want to drop this guy down even more. Unholy DK, just you don't have threatening burst damage. Survivability is still an issue despite the changes. For me, for Unholy DK to become viable, they need to tune Death Coil to a position where it can crit for 2 million damage, probably non-crit around 1.3 to 1.5 million damage, so that it fits in line with the burst damage abilities of other specs, because at the moment it just doesn't have that bite. That is the main issue issue for it, at least offensively. Defensively, Death Strike is still kind of just not enough. It has so many limitations. It requires the target to have hit you decently hard. It requires resources, and it requires range. There's a lot of requirements on it for it not giving you that much throughput, which is why I'm kind of dumping Unholy down to the bottom after having personally played it and seen it play out even further. But Destruction Affliction, you're probably still hanging out here. I think Fire Mage, you're still hanging out here. Definitely better than before. Again, I think all three of these specs you've improved, unlike, Unholy, which I think is still kind of at the bottom. You guys are getting better with the changes. Frost definitely is better with the changes, so I think B is more than fair for it. Arms Warrior, I think it's honestly maybe falling off a bit, so I'm keeping it on B with the prediction that I made for it. Still decent synergy with a lot of classes. So I think that you get kited a lot by these S tier guys. It just gets really difficult in a lot of lobbies. Survival Hunter with the changes is nice. I think BM and Marksman, again, as I've said, is a many tier list. Main advantage is just their range. So like if damage is even equally competitive, being able to do it from range is generally a bigger benefit. And it doesn't have the type of lockdown that a lot of the other melee DPS get as far as like being able to stun its target that it's attacking, which is a huge issue because its throughput is fine. Its mechanics are fine. It's the stun locking, that's the main issue. We talked about Shaman, we talked about Mistweaver. Fury Warrior, I think C tier is fair. I think you guys are starting to fall off. You're not completely unviable. This is like the, oh my god, you're really going to suffer a lot tier. You're maybe a little bit above that, but I think Arms is definitely still overtaking you. Outlaw Rogue, I think it's better than Holy DK. Is it worse than Frost? Like, am I jumping this up to B tier? Asa Rogue, I do want to move around, but Outlaw Rogue, I think we'll leave here. I think it's as complicated as Feral, but it's really tough to get the throughput value from it like you can Feral as far as damage. They did bump your stamina up a little bit, but that's kind of irrelevant to the damage issue. Assassination Rogue is really hard for me because my experience on it is that I want to kind of put it here on A tier. But you can get situations where Paladins counter you really bad. I think that's just going to be true of any Rogue spec. So like I'm going to leave it on B and be a little bit more conservative with it, but I don't think it's that bad. It's definitely better than these guys by a large margin, which is why I think it needs to be distinct between the tiers for the specializations. Augmentation is probably not this low based on my prediction. It's just a cheese spec though. So like, I mean, I can dump it up here in the B tier. You just fly through one shot. If you get the kill with it, you're pretty happy. If you don't, you're pretty sad. It's just very one-dimensional. There's not really a lot to say about it with the current tuning for it. Enhancement Shaman. I think you guys are better than Unholy DKs. I think it would be unfair for me to say that you're not better than Unholy DKs. So like, am I bouncing Enhance up to... this is weird how like my entire scope of the game as far as competitive viability has changed and shifted after playing DK. I just feel like it was almost like, oh my god, Enhance with Shaman is a blessing to play after playing DK. And I feel like that's saying something, right? Because Enhance is not doing hot. But after playing DK, I'm like, man, I actually liked my push on Enhance. Like, Enhance push was way more fun. So like, I think Enhance might actually be kind of more on the B tier. I think the things that are carrying Enhance at the moment would be self-healing. You basically can't die, especially if you're playing a Stormbringer build. You can get a ton of healing surges off. I just made a build video guide on that. My most recent video, I'll have it linked at the end of this one if you guys want to check that out. But it was a way better experience than Unholy DK. I think right now Unholy DK certainly is suffering the most of any DPS spec. And it's mostly because it's just lacking that edge. Has decent sustained damage, but no edge and not enough defense to get to the point where its sustained damage would actually be meaningful. So you either up its burst damage to be having equal competitive edge, or you up its survivability even more, but then it starts to enter tank territory. So I think buffing the edge of its damage towards Death Coil a little bit more with maybe a tiny smidge on Death Coil, or maybe removing some of the restrictions on Death Coil, like you have to get hit by an attack, maybe remove that entirely, so it just gives a base value heal every time. You know how much it's going to heal, because otherwise it's so many limitations on its recovery that makes it really difficult in order to survive at the moment. But that's my thoughts. Definitely some specs, big improvements. I think Demonology was the most improved. Fire Mage felt a little bit of it, maybe in Frost DK a little bit. And then Affliction and Destro, it's still yet to be seen. I think Destro could show some potential to be higher than this, but I want to leave it in a little bit more of a conservative spot at the moment. And we'll kind of have to wait and see if more changes come through for this week. We do have another major patch that's coming up in a little bit with 11.1.7 before 11.2. It is coming towards the end of the season, so maybe they're just going to be like, meh, this is what it is. The season's over and there's no more changes. Would suck to be a DK, basically, if that did happen. And maybe a little bit with a Fury Warrior and an Outlaw Rogue. which is unfortunate because I mean they did try and get you guys back into the game, but I don't think the numbers were enough from my own personal experience. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. Am I totally off base of this? What's your experience like? I'm playing my best to play every day, stream every day, taking multiple perspectives and spec perspectives. Because for me, I just want the game to be the best that it can be. Because obviously that's going to be of most benefit to me and most benefit to you and all of us who want to enjoy it, right? Never going to sit here and try and be biased towards getting like one spec really strong and another spec be really awful in that sense. Because I don't think it's good. I think the game can be in a spot where all the specializations feel awesome and fun. I do believe that's a reality that can occur. Right now we're getting pretty close, but I think it's still at least another week of tuning away. And I just don't know if it's going to happen or not. But if it does, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss the update on it. But other than that, thank you guys very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.